This is the nation's dirtiest air.
We have, I think, a real health crisis on our hands.
It's what more than 1 million in the Salt Lake City area are breathing.
Utah's air quality right now isn't good, and it's getting worse, and you can see from these pictures from Chopper 5. Today, the Utah Division of Air Quality put out an alert saying mandatory action is necessary here in northern Utah.
Hope and Bob, I know you're inside, but outside, we've been staring at this nasty inversion all day long, and we know that that means those people with some breathing issues can really be struggling. But I spoke with Intermountain Healthcare, one of their cardiologists, and he tells me those with an underlying heart condition, they're at a much higher risk of problems.
When you think of smog, Los Angeles or Phoenix probably comes to mind, but right now the worst air in the country is actually hovering over Salt Lake City, Utah.
A city known for its clear skies and white-capped mountains is now choking on a heavy blanket of smog. The Environmental Protection Agency says this month, Salt Lake City has the worst air quality in the country.
During the winter of 2007, we had a prolonged winter inversion, and it was very distressing to me that there was no public dialogue about what kind of a health crisis this represented. We realized that what these winter inversions really represent is a genuine public health emergency. Initially, what we thought was most alarming was the fact that air pollution has been proven to kill people.
Hello and welcome to CO2. Today, we're going to talk about the harmful effects of poor air quality because it could kill you.
And based on a number of medical studies, we soon estimated that between 1,000 and 2,000 people in Utah died every year prematurely because of the air pollution.
Told ya.
It's actually easy to get people to understand that if public agencies announced that today was going to be a red water day, would you drink out of that tap?
I know I wouldn't.
Nobody would. But we've become acclimated to the idea that it's okay for our air quality to be compromised, even to the point of it being labeled as a red alert day. We've almost accepted that as our fate or an inevitability.
So one of the most important things to understand is that we don't see any evidence of there being some level of air pollution where it's completely safe. The benefits of reducing our air pollution occur even when we have only modest levels of air pollution. So it turns out that there's no sort of single safe threshold level of air pollution.
Most of the public's appreciation of the issue was pretty much limited to air pollution causing an increase in respiratory symptoms, specifically aggravating asthma, for example. But to know that, in fact, it causes an acceleration of hardening of the arteries or atherosclerosis, to understand that, in fact, that sort of phenomenon was responsible for people literally dropping dead, causing heart attacks and strokes and sudden death, heart arrhythmias, that is kind of a whole new level of alarm.
We have two big issues in Utah. We have a wintertime particulate matter problem. That is comprised of several different things in and of itself. It's comprised of direct particulates that come out of combustion from things like tailpipes of vehicles or from factories, but it's also comprised of secondary particulates that are formed when different types of gases react in the atmosphere. So that's all the particulate problem. The second issue is the problem we have right now, today on a hot summer day, is ground level ozone or low level ozones.
What Mr. Sowers is saying is particulates are the way that we measure the harmful matter in our air. Moral of the story is, it's bad.
Well, if you look at our air pollution from the standpoint of what is it doing to your personal health? Say me, someone who lives most of their entire life along the Wasatch Front. Because of the air that we're breathing here, my personal risk for dying of cancer is increased about 22%. It means that even if I don't get cancer, my own life will probably be shortened by about 2 years. Now, what's 2 years of your life worth? But no matter what your age, looking at the prospect of losing 2 years of your life, I think that's enormous. If you look at people who have strokes or heart attacks or sudden death related to air pollution, some studies suggest that those events actually shorten the lives of those victims as much as 10 years.
The more we find out about health and the effect of dirty air on our health, the more we realize that it has very significant negative impacts on people, on the quality of their lives.
People are not going to want to live here if the air quality is that damaging to their public health. So it's going to cost our economy money. It's going to make businesses leave. If we don't do something to improve our air quality, we might have some of the best athletic opportunities in the country, you know, in terms of mountain biking and skiing and all these recreational things that we love. But if we keep getting dubbed Smog Lake City in some of the biggest national ski magazines, people will not come here.
I think that we try to understand it as an inventory issue and address it where the problems lie. So there are the state emissions where statewide there are a lot more, the non-anthropogenic piece, in other words, the non-human caused piece is a much bigger piece of the statewide pie because there are all kinds of, natural plant material and dust and all these other things. And then we have the urban air quality problem, which is greater than 50% transportation oriented. 35 to 40% is building emissions, which is just commercial operations essentially. And then point source emissions or industrial emissions. And that makes up 11 or 12% typically in a given year.
Our group disagrees robustly with the state's claim that in fact industry is only responsible for like 11% of our pollution. You can manipulate statistics to almost tell any story you want to if you decide what the story is ahead of time. And we think that that's a manipulation of the situation. We think industry is a much bigger player in the pollution mix.
Take a moment and take a deep breath.
The solutions to improving our air quality are fairly straightforward. We all breathe the same air, so it's really largely a matter of public policy.
Now, unfortunately, what has not happened yet is that our policymakers, our politicians, have really addressed it seriously.
They're not hearing from people on a regular basis, but the people that they are hearing from is paid lobbyists. That's sort of who's in their ear all the time.
One of the worst examples this last session was the bill that Rocky Mountain Power pushed that was defeated earlier in the day, and then all the lobbyists from Rocky Mountain Power got active, and something like 3 hours later, took another vote on the same bill, and something like 30 legislators completely reversed their vote and passed this bill that pretty much everyone recognizes was basically a giveaway to Rocky Mountain Power, but not very good for the public interest.
Rocky Mountain Power is somewhat unlike other utilities in that, their mothership is Berkshire Hathaway, and they own all of the assets. So they own, the rail lines, the coal mines, and the coal power plants. They have a lot of control over that pricing. Sort of at the heart of this bill was a transferring of risk from shareholders to ratepayers. And the bill came up for a vote. It failed in the House. Well, if you can get more than 50% of the legislature to vote to reconsider, then the bill can have new life. And so the lobbyists from Rocky Mountain Power were gleeful, even after the vote failed, because they knew that it wouldn't be hard to turn that right back around. And sure enough, in a few hours, they had enough votes to literally resurrect the bill and pass it in the same night, which was the last night of the session in the last few hours of it. It goes to show you the sheer force of power that a lobby group like Rocky Mountain Power, for example, has. If the everyday citizen, I think, was as engaged as those lobbyists were and had the contact information for their reps and was really plugged in, which I know is hard to do with a life and a family and a job or whatever, but I think we would have laws that were more reflective of people's values because they hear from those corporations all the time and they certainly, swing the bat pretty hard.
Republican Senator Christensen and Republican Representatives Noel and Dayton are notorious for denying the air quality problem. So we called to get an interview.
All right. Hey, Representative Noel. Hi, Representative Dayton. Hey, is this Representative Christensen? Hi, I am Logan Rosson with Spyha Productions. I'm currently making a documentary and wondering if I could do an interview with you about Utah's air quality. You would not like to be in that film? Okay. All right, thank you. Bye. Aww.
There is a very large disconnect between the priorities of lawmakers and the priorities of their constituents. We've had lawmakers somewhat cynically say, if you really want to get somebody's attention up at the legislature, meet them in person, you're going to get attention. But if you meet them in person and give them $1,000, then you've really got their attention.
Surprise, surprise. The system is run by money.
Well, environmental advocacy groups like ours and all the others don't have $1,000 to give to a legislator for their future campaign efforts. But a lot of businesses do. And unfortunately, there are a lot of businesses whose interest is somewhat, if not directly, in opposition to the public interest.
Please excuse me while I throw up a little bit.
Affordable, reliable energy is an opportunity for air quality because more people are going to transition to electric vehicles if electricity costs 9 cents as opposed to 17 or 35. Affordability presents opportunities. Affordability of power presents opportunities. If you could afford, for example, to heat your home with electricity rather than gas, you'd reduce the emissions of your home in a troubled air shed on the back of generation away from a troubled air shed. That's an opportunity for air quality.
We have to balance competing interests. I mentioned the competing interests that we have of our public health issue and the quality of that our air has on our impact that it has on people's lives from a health, physical perspective. Those are legitimate interests, and they have to be balanced off against the interests that we have to not impose too many regulations on businesses to the point that they say, well, look, you know, we're not going to come and do our business in Utah, not because your air quality is bad, but because there are so many regulations on air quality and on business that we don't want to come there.
A lot of the legislators who are up and down the Wasatch Front do not seem to prioritize air quality. I think that there is a sense of, we don't want more government regulation, we want to let the free market decide. I can understand those ideals, but when it's an issue of life or death, which, you know, air quality is a really serious public health crisis, I think that it needs to hold a little more water than it does. We need to get better monitoring for our Division of Air Quality and better resources to mitigate the problem, for better enforcement.
It's absolutely essential that we understand that high quality air, or good air quality, is an economic good like anything else that we want to have. So investing in good air quality is worth it.
Let that sink in for a second. We can have clean air and an efficient economy.
There is no way that Utah can continue to expand its population indefinitely. That's just not realistic. We don't have the resources to do that. We have got to accept the fact that the world's climate is being affected by the energy that we use, especially fossil fuels. Individuals can do a lot by modifying their behavior, riding bikes to work instead of taking a car every time. They can change the amount of heating and cooling that they use in their home, which is unfortunately all too often still the use of fossil fuels. But we have to have a rational, coordinated policy engineered towards specifically keeping most of the remaining fossil fuels in the ground, or we're creating a climate apocalypse. And we used to think that maybe for future generations, but now it appears as though that whole phenomenon is accelerating to the point where it'll affect a livable climate for people even in my lifetime, let alone subsequent generations.
Well, there you have it, folks. The air quality in Utah in a nutshell. Election day is November 8th. Go out and vote. This is your opportunity to truly make an impact on your community. To see what kind of grade your representative and senator received regarding the air quality issue, visit www.healutah.org.